Hi, my name is Kim Klein. Welcome to the webinar Nonprofits Talking Taxes. This is actually a kind of an infomercial to give you a sense of what our longer workshops are that are by the same name. We want nonprofit staff to begin to take a role in advocating for fair and just tax policy, and we've created a curriculum that helps you understand that fair and just tax policy is something that you can understand and you probably already have opinions about. We're hoping that all of you who see this will decide to invite us to do a live workshop with your staff or a webinar with your staff or any group of people you can pull together. Goals of the presentation are pretty simple. Nonprofits work for the common good. Overall, all that we do, whether we're in arts or health or education or wilderness preservation, environment, we work to make our communities better places. And taxes are a part of that. An economist has recently said that he can tell you pretty much how many homeless people there are going to be in a community, what the quality of the schools are, even how thriving the arts and culture community is, simply by looking at the tax structure of that community, because taxes are a mirror of community values. And nonprofits, of course, are also a mirror of community values. So you can see we have a real stake in fair and just tax policy. In this webinar, we're going to show some examples of how change could be made in California. We often feel very locked out of that process, but there are possible changes. And those changes are going to require all kinds of people talking about and beginning to form opinions about fair and just tax policy. So just let's begin. Here are some things that taxes help pay for, and we call them kind of public structures, anything that's held by all of us, that all of us enjoy. I'm wondering, just for fun, to ask the people that are on the webinar today to tell me what is something that you use frequently and that you enjoy that is primarily or entirely paid for by taxes. Anyone, just tell me something that you like.
Libraries.
City parks.
Libraries, great. Mm-hmm.
I really like feeling safe in a restaurant because of the health standards that have been set up.
Oh, okay. So you know the kitchen isn't overrun with rats and stuff?
No,
mm-hmm.
no.
I use the city sidewalks a lot to get places. So my main mode of transportation is by foot, and if I didn't have sidewalks, it would be a lot harder.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Ben, what about you?
City parks.
City parks, yeah, absolutely one of our favorites. The sidewalks leading up to city parks and then the parks themselves. So these are just some examples of things. We can all think of things, and it's a fun thing actually to go through your whole day, and as you're just walking around or on BART or on any kind of public transportation, just think to yourself, what am I using right now, or what am I enjoying right now, and what is the role of taxes in making that thing possible? Currently our tax policies are leaving the common good behind. Here in California, it means we have very high dropout rate. It means we have very poor health care for way too many people. Even though we are a leader in the environmental movement, we actually have 5 of the most polluted cities in the United States. And we've gone from having schools that were #1 in the nation up until the early 1980s to number 48, but we've increased to have the 4th largest prison system. We really believe these do not reflect our values, and we want to do something about it. What can nonprofits do, though? People often kind of wonder about that. Well, there are some things we can do. Number 1, understand our influence. We are an enormous economic driver. We employ 10% of the workforce. We're a huge, huge number of people work for us, and a lot of money runs through our sector every single year. If we could pull that all together, and even a small fraction of us speak with one voice and advocate in favor of fair and just tax policies and appropriate funding for things that ought to be held by us in common, we could actually be a very powerful force. We also need to understand the obstacles to adequate funding. Okay? And I'm going to show some of these in the following examples. Our budget process is a problem, as well as the policies that we have. For example, tax cuts can pass very easily. We like to think of ourselves as a state that does everything with this so-called supermajority, which actually we also believe is not at all a majority. But as you can see by the tax structure, things that would be very good for corporations or for wealthy people actually work in 2 ways for them. One is that tax cuts, which mostly benefit corporations and wealthy people, are made very easily. And the other is that tax increases that would mostly affect wealthy people and corporations are very difficult to make. And in fact, in California right now, they're almost impossible because most Republicans have signed a thing called the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which is a document that's been put in front of every incumbent and every candidate for office for many, many years by a man named Grover Norquist, who is the Director of Americans for Tax Reform. And here in California, all but 3 Republicans have signed it. The Taxpayer Protection Pledge says, I will vote against any and all efforts to increase taxes. So basically, even if we would want to try to have any kind of bipartisan agreement, you have a huge number of people who are saying you can say whatever you want, but I intend to never vote for tax increases. There's not a whole lot of room for movement there. We believe by putting pressure on these Republicans and asking them, are you really representing your constituency when you sign this kind of thing, that we can get them to stop signing it. And there are enough nonprofits in all the constituencies of these people that we could be an influence there. We also think we have to look at some possible solutions. People say, okay, well, what's your bright idea to fix the California budget? One bright idea we have is to require a simple majority for increasing revenues, the same majority required for tax cuts. When you have a 66% of the legislature required to pass something, you basically put an enormous amount of power in 1 or 2 people, because it is that many people that tips to 2/3. And right now in California, about 4 people are can hold up the entire budget or hold up any kind of revenue solution. Let's look at some other solutions. This is a fun one. There are 22 states in the nation that produce oil. 21 of them have what's called an oil severance tax. California is the only state not to tax oil coming out of the ground. If we were to impose even just a 6% oil severance tax, we would raise over $1 billion.
Yeah, and I heard that when Sarah Palin was governor of Alaska, they passed a 25% oil severance tax. So that means California is to the right of Sarah Palin. That's scary.
That is really scary, isn't it? 25% oil severance tax under Sarah Palin as governor. Yeah, absolutely. Whoa. And we're just looking at a little 6% tax. Here's some other possible solutions. We're not saying these are the absolutely right solutions. There could be problems with them, but we're just saying there are some options. Okay? You can see, of course, we tried to pass Proposition 19, which would have legalized marijuana, would have allowed each community to decide how they wanted to tax it. So if some community didn't feel that marijuana should be taxed, they wouldn't have to do that. But communities that felt like this is California's largest cash crop and the people that grow it and profit from it ought to be paying their share of taxes, those people could have imposed a tax. Okay? We also say, well, what about fees? Let's bring back some fees. The vehicle license fee is a really good example. A simple fee of $18 per car in California would have kept all our state parks open. And as a lot of you know, 50 state parks are slated to close in the next month or so. So who was it that said they liked parks? You know, that's going to be a problem. You know what? Here's the thing we do know. We don't know all the solutions that happen. That's why we need to discuss them. But one thing we do know, there are enough resources in this state. There is plenty of money in California. We are the world's 8th largest economy. Look at this great diagram. You read through it. There's Germany, France, United Kingdom, Italy, California, Brazil, Spain, Canada. We are the only state that's in the top 100 economies. So people who tell you we're broke, we don't have enough money, that's not true. The money is just not evenly distributed, and it's not properly dealt with in terms of tax policy. This goes for both revenue solutions and also spending solutions. For example, people say, well, shouldn't we save money? Yes, we absolutely should. Here's an example. What about getting rid of the death penalty? That would save $125 million a year. But where does it start? The common good, we believe, has to become a topic of conversation. People have to step up to the plate and say, I'm not sure what I think. I have half an opinion. I had this opinion, but now I might want to have that opinion. Our first step is talking to each other. This is what we want you to do. This is what you can do. Talk with coworkers about how taxes are a mirror of community values. help other people form opinions about budget and policy proposals. There's a lot of them happening over the next many months. And above all things, don't be intimidated by people who say, this is too complicated. It's not complicated. Policy is complicated, but values are not complicated. And also, people who can't see anything good to say about government, the government actually protects their right to have that opinion, but they're not going to change their mind. We're looking for people who actually are kind of interested in wanting to be engaged but haven't known how to do that up to now.
Hey, Kim.
Yeah?
What about faith communities and religious organizations? Does this apply to them?
Oh yeah, this absolutely applies to faith communities and religious organizations, which actually of that 112,000 nonprofits I referred to earlier, about 30% of them are faith communities. Sometimes I think churches and synagogues don't realize that they are nonprofits, and temples and mosques and so on. We actually have a webinar and a workshop presentation of curriculum that's entirely designed for communities of faith. So if that's who you are as you're watching this, remember we can tailor our workshop specifically to you. What we want all of you to do who are listening to this is set up a free workshop at your workplace. You can see how to do that. Please be with us online, be part of our social media campaign. You can totally see how to do that.
I just want to cut in here. The workshops, I attended one, and they're really fun and interesting. And the first time I went, I discovered that I really did have some opinions about tax policy. I just hadn't called it that before. So I would really recommend those workshops.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much. That's the experience we hear from a lot of people who take our workshops. So just remember, above all, it's free. It can be tailored to the time available. It can be tailored to the audience. So let's make the common good a common topic of conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please stand by.